Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks. A video today about Portugal. We're going to be looking at some of the pros and cons, some of the good and the bad things about moving to a country like this in the year 2020 and beyond. So let's check out this small city here. Now today's video is sponsored by Skillshare, but I'll tell you more about Skillshare in a little while. Now we're going to go into this park here and we'll talk about some of the things that I love about this country. And one of the things that I love about Portugal is that you find parks like this in the middle of these small cities, and they're fantastic places, secluded places, really green, and you can get away from the hustle and bustle of the cities or the towns in this country. You can see this place here, lots of vegetation, virtually nobody around. It's a quiet time of the day, and of course you can walk through these parks, do exercise, relax, and that is definitely one of the pros of this country in my opinion. Now another pro about this part of Portugal is the weather. We're about 20 kilometers away from the coast here, and the weather is quite mild. It can get hot in summer. It can get up into the mid-30s, so it can be quite hot, but you've got the beach close by and cooler temperatures on the coast, of course. The temperatures drop quite substantially the closer you get to the coast, so the mild Atlantic temperatures in this part of the world, in my opinion, are pro. And the winters in this part of the world are quite mild as well. You don't get really cold winters, but they can be a bit humid and damp. So the weather in this part of Portugal, good in my opinion. Now Portugal, the weather can vary quite a bit. The north can be quite rainy and cold, especially in the winter months. In the south of Portugal, of course, the weather is a lot better. But the weather in this part of Portugal, fantastic compared to a lot of other places in Europe, for example. Now another great thing about this country is the coast and the beaches. Lots of coastal areas, lots of long beaches for you to practice activities. If you like going to the beach, that is. Great places to practice sport, great places to practice exercise. Great surfing beaches, of course, up and down the coast. And that is something that I do enjoy about this country. Living near the coast and having ocean views every day, even if you're driving by, in my opinion is a pro, and it always puts a smile on my face when I see the ocean. However, I will say that the water temperature in this country is extremely cold. You go for a swim here for longer than 5 minutes, you're going to need a wetsuit. So that's maybe the only downside of beach life in this country, the cold water. But it's an open coastline and it's something that I really like. Now another thing I really like about Portugal is the lifestyle. There's a really laid-back lifestyle here. For some people that can be a bit of a con, difficult to get things done, but it's something that I like, the fact that nobody ever seems to be in a hurry, especially in some of these smaller cities. Of course, it would be different if you went to the big cities like Lisbon or Porto, but in smaller cities like this, nobody's in a hurry. People take their time. They take their time to have a coffee. They go in, they sit down. The takeaway concept virtually doesn't exist. You don't see people walking around the streets with a cup of coffee in their hand. People go into the coffee shop, sit down, have a coffee, something to eat, and it's really laid back. Fantastic if you're looking to take a bit of stress out of your lifestyle. And that leads me to another thing that I love about this country is the food culture. Difficult not to like Portuguese food. It's not the most elaborated food in the world, and if I had one complaint, it'd be that there's too many carbohydrates. A lot of dishes are served with rice and potatoes, so it can get a little bit heavy, but if you like good quality, well-cooked produce, Portugal is definitely a country to enjoy the cuisine. Not sure about vegetarian dishes, especially outside the big cities. You don't see a lot of vegetarian restaurants in some of the smaller cities, but the food culture here definitely great, and it's a slow food culture as well. People take time out of their day to eat lunch, to go to a restaurant, to sit down, have a proper meal, and that's one of the things that I like about it. You do have fast food choices, and every year more and more fast food places spring up. But here in Portugal, they also have their own version of fast food, which is barbecue chicken, so it's a healthier option in my opinion. And there's also a great wine culture in Portugal, and this area here, central Portugal, is also a wine producing area, and some of the local wines here are quite good. The white wines are very good. The red wines, not so much. The better red wines you'll find in the north of the country, around the Porto area, on the Douro River, also in the Alentejo region as well. That's where the better red wines come from. But they do produce red wines in this area, but white is the drink of choice in my opinion. In fact, there's a local winery just down the road here, so we'll go and take a look at it from the outside. And another great thing about this country is that eating out is not expensive. Of course, you can go to expensive restaurants if that's your choice, but in general, going out for a meal or taking the family out for a meal is not an expensive experience compared to some other places in the world. Even in some of the more tourist areas here, you can go out, have a meal, bottle of wine included, family of 3, for around 40 euros. So well, that's quite cheap in my opinion, and you can find cheaper options as well. One of the great things about these smaller cities in Portugal is you find gems like this one here. Check this house out. Now that was the local winery that I just walked past. They had a sign out the front there saying come in and try some of the local wine. I might do that. I might go in and check it out, and maybe I'll buy a few bottles as well, because as I said, the white wine in this area is quite good. So here's this coffee culture that I was talking about. Take a few minutes out of your day, sit down and have a great cup of coffee. And that's another thing, hard to get a bad cup of coffee in this country. And another one of the things about Portugal, I've mentioned it in previous videos, is that it is a very safe country, not a lot of crime in this part of the world. Of course, the situation is going to be different, again, in the bigger cities. Street crime, of course, could be a problem. You have to be careful, of course. You can't let your guard down. Be a little bit vigilant. Don't leave your phone lying around, or your wallet lying around, or your purse on the table. It could get stolen. But in general, in this part of the world, I feel very, very safe. Now I'm going to head to the coast now, so I'll pick this video up there and we'll talk about a few more of the good things and more of the bad things about a country like this. So let's go. Now I'm back on the coast and it's a lot cooler here compared to where I was before. You can really notice the effect of the ocean bringing those temperatures down. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about is cost of living. Now Portugal is a fairly cheap country if you're coming from a northern European country, or if you're coming from a country like Australia, a country like the States, a country like Canada. Portugal is a fairly cheap country. As I said, it's not expensive to eat out. You can get a cup of coffee for a cheap price, and general cost of living is not that expensive. There are some things that can be a little bit expensive, for example, energy costs. If you have to get gas, petrol and things like those for your car, they can be expensive, and it can also be expensive to drive in Portugal because you have to pay for the road system. So if you want to use good roads, you have to pay, so that is going to dig into your expenses. But in this part of the world, central Portugal, you can still pick up property at a fairly reasonable price. I'm not going to go into detail about costs, but I'll leave up here a link to a website where you can check out prices for yourself, and you'll be able to see that property prices in this part of the world are still quite reasonable, and it's not that expensive to rent either. Now I'll just interrupt the video there to talk about Skillshare, the sponsors of today's video. Skillshare is an online community that offers thousands of classes for creative and curious people. It's a great place to explore new skills and deepen your existing passions. Skillshare's lessons can help you stay inspired, and you'll be joining a community with millions of other creatives and people with similar interests to yours. To give you an idea, learning better Portuguese is my main objective at the moment, and I'm currently doing some 3-minute Portuguese classes, a course by Kieran Ball. I'm also trying to lead a healthier lifestyle at the moment, doing more exercise, eating better food, and I found some really interesting classes on Skillshare by Justin Quinton called How to Get Your Diet on Track. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, and there are no ads. And they're always launching premium new classes, and it costs less than $10 a month for an annual subscription. And for a limited time, use the link in the description below and get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership so you can try it out for yourself. I really recommend Skillshare, so check out that link in the description. Now back to the video. Now, unfortunately, there's no such thing as a perfect country, and Portugal is no different. There's lots of good things, but there's also some bad things about this country, in my opinion. For example, driving in this country can be a bit of a nightmare. I've spoken about it in previous videos about this country, and things don't seem to get any better. Some people become crazy when they get behind the wheel, and every time I come here I see a lot of close calls on the roads, a lot of near accidents, especially when it comes to overtaking. People don't seem to know how to overtake in this country, and they often do it very, very badly. And speed is one of the problems. You can see people going at 150, 160, 170 kilometers an hour on 120 kilometer roads. On 90 kilometer an hour roads, you see people going at 130, and people tend to drive a little bit too fast. But hey, don't worry, if you were to move here and started to drive, you would get used to the driving in Portugal, but it might take you a little while. Now, I might not have mentioned this before, but one of the great things about the country are the sunsets. Check out this one that I have behind me. Fantastic. Now, another one of the difficult things about this country is learning the language. Portuguese is a very difficult language in my opinion to learn, especially if you come from a background where you've learned Spanish like me. Learning Portuguese can be quite of a challenge. After all the time I've spent here, I'd say I'd have an intermediate level of the language because there's lots and lots of different sounds to get your mouth around in the Portuguese language. Very, very complicated. To read, it's not very difficult. You can understand newspapers, you can understand signs, but comprehension, very, very difficult. Getting the words out and making yourself understood, very, very difficult. The good thing is that you'll find lots of people that speak English, so that's not really a problem to communicate, but learning the language can be, in my opinion, a bit of a challenge. Okay, so I'll pick this video up again. I'm about 100 kilometers inland now in the center of the country. Tagus River behind me, one of the main rivers here in Portugal. I'm in a small town called Constância. And I mentioned before that one of the good things about Portugal is the slow pace of life for a lot of people, but that can also be a negative thing as well, because that slow pace of life might not be what you are used to, and it might be hard to get used to a slow pace of life here in Portugal. That could be a negative. So you need to keep that in mind. It takes longer to get things done. If you have to deal with bureaucracy, it can be slow, it can be quite tedious, and those are things that maybe you are not used to. And also the general day-to-day can be quite slow as well for a lot of people. Of course, not necessarily in the big cities. The big cities move quicker, but of course, if you're in a smaller town here in Portugal, you might have to have a lot of patience when it comes to getting things done. Now, another negative, and I've spoken about this in previous videos about Portugal, is the economy. Don't think about coming to this country to work, in my opinion. Don't think about coming to Portugal to work unless you're a digital nomad, you've got an online business or something like that, because the economy is not very good and the job market is not very good either. If your company transfers you here and you're on a good salary, fantastic, but don't come to a country like Portugal expecting to get a job. If you're retired or planning your retirement, that's not going to affect you. The economy is not really going to affect you unless you invest in the stock market here or you put your money into some type of business. That could be a problem. But if you get your pension from home, or if you've got your savings already sorted out, that's not going to be an issue. The economy has improved over the years, but salaries in this country are still very low, and you only have to see the amount of Portuguese people there are around the world, in Canada, Australia, the USA, other countries in Europe, to realize that this is not a country where work is abundant. That is not the case, and in the current circumstances, of course, with the crisis that we're all going to have to put up with probably for the next couple of years because of the health situation in Europe, I can't see the economy in Portugal getting any better soon. So the economy in this country can be a bit of a downer, in my opinion. Now, another thing you might not like about this country is the mass tourism, especially if you are in Lisbon or Porto. You will find that there are lots and lots of tourists in those areas throughout the year, and the summer months can be unbearable. And in coastal areas over the summer months, you will also find that that is the case. If you like going out, going to your favorite restaurant, in summer you might not be able to get a table. So that's also something that you're going to have to keep in mind. And tourism at the moment is a little bit down, but it will come back, and Portugal over the years has become a very, very popular destination for tourists. So keep that in mind, that it could affect your quality of life in this country. So I'm going to start to wrap the video up with this fantastic view behind me, some of the good things and some of the bad things you should keep in mind should you be considering moving to Portugal in the near future. But again, I will say that no country is perfect, but in this country, in my opinion, the pros definitely outweigh the cons, at least in the year 2020. And of course, with everything that's been going down in 2020, Portugal is a country that, in my opinion, has handled the situation fairly well. But remember that no country is perfect, and you'll find things that you like and things that you dislike about this country, just like any other country in the world. Questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Debate the situation out. I'll see you in the next one. Até logo.